Hello again, my beautiful people. This is Personal Finance for Us. We're going to be continuing our Investment 101 series. Last time we got into the very basics of individual stocks. Today we're going to be getting into groups of stocks, the different types of groups of stocks. There's going to be a lot of terminology in this video. Grab your notebooks. Let's get into it. People are nervous about the stock market and feel like the markets are just one big casino. That viewpoint, however, shows a fundamental lack of understanding of how the stock market works. As we discussed last time, thinking about stocks, when thinking about stocks, you're thinking about companies that you know, that you love, that everybody you know buys those products or shops at that place. Chances are, if a lot of people you know patron that organization, chances are they're a quality company that has that sells a quality product. If that's your general investment perspective, then you see it's definitely not gambling. It's believing in a company enough that you actually want to put your money into that board's hands because you believe they can in turn make you more money. Now, that's not to say that individual stocks don't have risks. Of course they do. That's why it's naive to think that you can just come and pick any stock, some obscure company, and bet the farm. That's gambling. Also, buying the stock of any individual company is also a bit of a risk. What I mean by that is if you put all of your money into one investment basket and that company or that company industry gets rocked, then your investment eggs are probably going to get cracked. Just look at the travel industry with coronavirus. Also, I can name several companies that are defunct or about defunct that were giants before we were even born. Toys R Us was one of my favorite stores growing up as a kid, and Sears and JCPenney were household names. In fact, the Sears catalog was pretty much the Amazon of its day. But just like people, businesses often have life cycles. Technology changes, which means businesses must adapt. As you can imagine, keeping up with so many different companies across a broad range of industries is a full-time job. As much as I'm a fan of Warren Buffett and his investment perspective, I couldn't possibly study enough companies deeply enough to hedge my risk. Reading business reports is his idea of fun, not mine. So that is where mutual funds come in. A mutual fund is a group of several stocks that are mutually funded by a group of investors, you and me. There's a ton of different mutual funds to choose from across a variety of sectors. Now, instead of you trying to scrounge together $3,000 to buy one share of Amazon, you can instead buy a fund that has Amazon stock in it, and then you're exposed to some Amazon as well as a group of other companies. We've actually been witnessing the importance of investing this way. We saw a lot of uncertainty in the markets when coronavirus took hold, and many sectors like travel got rocked. Other industries have been exploding. BJ's, Walmart, Amazon have all reported an increase in revenue as customers are spending more time at home. This is going to happen in any kind of economy. One sector might get absolutely rocked and another sector is flying high. This is the importance of diversification. So if you owned a mutual fund that had Delta but also had Amazon and Walmart, your investment isn't taking that much of a hit. Mutual funds help you spread your risk. Side note, tech is pretty much single-handedly holding up the stock market, as companies that required large hordes of people to be put into small, tight spaces are getting hammered right now and having to weather the storm. This is a stark contrast from the dot-com bubble of the early 2000s. It's important to remember that every dog has its day, and that's why diversification is important. Mutual funds have been around for a really long time, and they're pretty much the bread and butter of the things you can choose from in your 401k, for example. Now, how is it decided that what companies get put into a particular fund? Well, that is the job of someone called the mutual fund manager. It's pretty much his job to study companies and news all day and decide what goes into a particular fund, and that's usually going to cost you about 1 to 2% per year, and that's whether your portfolio is hitting all-time highs or all-time lows. So when picking mutual funds, there's definitely costs to consider. This brings me to a subgroup of mutual funds called index funds. Index funds are passively managed, meaning they don't have some dude whose job it is to nourish these funds. As a result, index funds cost a lot less per year to own. Who picks the stocks? Well, John Bogle, more commonly known as Jack Bogle, is known as the father of index fund investing. He's also the founder of the infamous brokerage firm called Vanguard. He figured out that if you buy the market, more often than not, you will beat out these fund managers who are actively picking these companies. So what do I mean by that? If you've ever watched any financial news, you've probably heard of the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, and the Dow Jones. These are all known as indices if you're nasty. Basically, they take a group of particular companies that meet a particular criteria and lump them together so we can measure their performance. So those top companies are pretty much a measure of how that entire industry or sector or whatever it is it's measuring is doing. For example, the S&P 500, known as Standard & Poor's 500, is the 500 largest publicly traded companies in America. Because it makes up the largest 500 companies in the country, this is a fantastic index to pay attention to, because if the top 500 companies across all sectors are having a tough time, everybody probably is, and vice versa. Getting back to Jack Bogle, he effectively figured out that if you just create mutual funds based on these indexes, you would effectively mirror the biggest movers in the market, and therefore you'd ultimately win. There was no guesswork, no picking out some magical dark horse. These are just tried and true giants in the country, and if you own them, you would likely do well. This is how index funds were formed. This is great news for small investors because this means you can buy mutual funds for a fraction of the cost, and it has been proven repeatedly over time that passive funds beat the vast majority of actively managed funds. So as an average person with an average job, we can pick our funds based on the biggest companies in America and go about our day. Okay, the last mutual fund type to talk about is known as an ETF, or exchange traded fund. ETFs are just like index funds that in some way mirror some sort of index, but they trade a little bit differently. Mutual funds and index funds aren't traded until at the end of the day. ETFs trade a little bit like stock. Basically, like in real time, you buy that amount of shares just like you were buying a regular stock, and you'll see the fluctuations go up and down throughout the day. That's really effectively the main difference. Okay, so those are the three major types of funds you can invest in to diversify your risk and keep you from having to study several different companies. These funds should really be the backbone of your investment strategy, as they do most of the heavy lifting for you. It's probably not a great plan to have your retirement accounts loaded up on single stocks or one or two single stocks, as should the company tank, there goes your nest egg. This has happened to several people who receive company stock as part of their retirement plan, and they never bother to diversify any further. They get to the end of their 30 years with a company, and all of a sudden the company has some bad performance, the market changes, and there you go, looking at retirement age with your nest egg getting wiped out. If you really want to buy single stock, it's probably better to do so with money that you can afford to risk losing, while keeping your long-term money diversified away safely. That'll do it for this one. This has been Personal Finance for Us. I hope you found the video informative. We'll catch you in the next one.